You have to hand it to my boy Teru, man. He goes all in. Even if defeated, this man puts up a hell of a fight. And truthfully, if anyone was going to have an action scene this week, I was assuming Mob, because imposter Mob, is it Dimple, is it not Dimple? This episode confirms it was. That kind of felt like the natural progression. But then the fact that, in my opinion, the most exciting and exhilarating content, yes, the ending is fantastic, and it's going to be explosive next week. But honestly, I think my boy Teru really stole the show. There was some horrifying imagery with him, like that moment when he's going inside his refrigerator, and you have Dimple imposter Mob behind him, and you can hardly see him, but you can kind of recognize some of the details. That's like some horror movie shit. And then the fact that the whole brainwashing, the whole town is brainwashed, I think Regan included, and the only one who seems to not be would be Mob at this point in time. I mean, Teru's up in the air with where he's at with his fate because he gets brainwashed and then he breaks it, so maybe there's two that could be useful there, but the fact that he went in, and I mean, he goes in to just destroy that broccoli tree, because who the hell wouldn't after realizing that the town's basically being plagued? Not only are the civilians being brainwashed to worship this religion, the tree is literally killing everything around it. It is absorbing every plant life out there, and essentially it's going to make the entire city a ghost town if it was to be left unattended, right? So the fact that you literally have someone come in and he comes knocking on the door, and then you see Dimple, and he's honestly, both sides were doing fairly well. There was some incredible moves that were happening, from just more distance space attacks, fists to the face, it felt like, and then to just see it crumble and shatter, you're like, damn, obviously we ain't ending here, like, we're in the final season, we're only episode 4, there's no way this is actually the end, but gotta admit, the dude's doing pretty well for himself, and then to see how it all just shattered around him. The animation was awesome. I love the shift in the art style. I've always complimented this, the way psychic powers are animated, with the, like, it's almost like a white pinkish tinge that will just light up, and it actually feels like it's kind of how I imagine if Pokemon was real and, like, psychic attacks were actually launched. Like, that's how it should look, sort of a thing. And I just love what they did with the presentation to then switch over to Mob. And, I mean, the brother being brainwashed, I thought was a given. I didn't know when it would happen, but I knew it would, because basically Reg and Mob come in, hey, we're gonna go lift the broccoli tree, carry it to an ocean, toss that bitch in the ocean. And obviously, and rightfully so, brother's over here being like, you gotta be kidding me, and then Mob's like, hey, you know, if we carry a table together, we can do it, so why not do it to a goddamn giant tree that is that heavy? I mean, my initial assumption was like Regan's plan would be like, Mob, get to 100 or close to it and just blow that bitch apart, but I guess it makes sense for not wanting to hurt civilians to lift and carry. But then there's the obvious thought that gets brought up, well, if everyone's like indoctrinated by this religion, grabbing the tree is going to have everyone attack you. So what do? Well, we get the hell out of Dodge and we run. Regan's plans make sense on one hand, but then when you look at it from the other, you realize he's kind of a moron, and that's what makes him so damn charming. And to see just like that confrontation between Regan and Mob at the end, I thought what was happening, and maybe this is what was happening, and maybe Mob is misunderstood because Regan wanted him to, but it seems like he was brainwashed as well. I thought what he was doing was he was trying to piss Mob off so that Mob would then go act on his own, because he knew Mob was doubting himself, doubting things like that. And as we saw at the end, Mob turns around and he goes and he's like, I'm going to go talk to him. And the fact that I thought what was going to happen was Mob was just going to launch himself in there. I was just on this violent kick. I thought people were going to explode things, just charge right in there. Instead, everyone starts worshiping my boy, and I'm like, okay, now they have two leaders, and clearly Mob has the support here with the indoctrination. Now, it seems like Dimple obviously didn't take Mob's breakup letter last week all too well, right? That whole conversation. The fact that they do worship Mob, I'm curious if this is Dimple's doing or just a side effect because Dimple looks so similar to Mob already in that form sort of a thing, and he needed a form that would obviously allow them to see him. So I'm curious to see, because Dimple versus Mob seems all but inevitable. Like, that has to happen, it feels like. But I'm interested to see, because Dimple is an interesting character where you can equally see him being a villain or someone to aid you in any given arc. And it very much, like, I'm not sure if Dimple's actually going to be the final hurrah or not. Like, I could easily see this ending in a couple of episodes with the actual final confrontation popping up, or escalates beyond our wildest imagination. Either way, I really think Mob Psycho 100 Season 3 has the potential to be the best season. And as I made note of, I think it was either last video or the video before that, even if the content up until that point wasn't the best content as a whole for Mob Psycho 100, Season 2 is just next level. I really think with the setup and the breadcrumbs that they're laying, and now we're really getting into the thick of it, this season has every right to be the best hands down. And if it does, that will be great because we can easily say Mob Psycho 100 only got better each season up until its finish line there. But either way, this was exciting. There was some interesting conversations for sure. There was, just seeing the whole city almost, they're like zombies, right? Like maybe they're not eating flesh, but really that should be a cult, and cults are just so dangerous as is. Add in like psychic powers to the mix and a giant broccoli tree that's basically killing everything around it. You basically have a recipe for the most dangerous cult imaginable. And I'm interested to see because Mob is maturing, right? And as I was talking in last video, Mob's popularity and his ego, I mentioned how it's kind of like a double-edged sword. On one hand, he's more confident, he's more mature. On the other hand, being that overconfident can definitely bite you in the ass. And right now, we're at a situation where Mob's pissed off. Mob's actually, he seems angry, and he seems like someone who's not angry in the way that he's about to reach 100. Yes, his counter went up this episode, but to me it almost comes across as like Mob is at this stage where he probably is going to hit 100 soon, but the fact that he's actually so pissed off that he's willing to go in, it's a type of Mob you just don't see when you compare where he was at in Season 1 and even hell, parts of Season 2, right? The character development of Mob is the best part of this show. It really is. And the character development in general. Reagan stole the show in Season 2. I think Mob stole the show in Season 1. And with Season 3, it feels like Mob is finally reaching his conclusion to his character arc. And as I've said before, really Mob Psycho 100 is a slice of life about a boy growing up, confused about where he wants to go in life. It's just, he's surrounded by psychic shenanigans, so it makes it far more interesting than a lot of slice of life that are more mundane about careers and things like that. But the life lessons, the conversations and things that pop up, it really can hit home with what happens to some of these characters, even if it is more supernatural than we'll ever deal with. Either way, Mob Psycho 100, I think this is probably the best episode of the season so far. I think 3 and 4 really are starting to take this season into that next level territory that Mob Psycho's always known for each season. Sometimes it kicks off right away, sometimes there's a bit of build-up, but Mob Psycho can take it slow because it's just that fantastic and it's always going to be interesting, even if it may not be the most talked about show of a season. But of course, pass the torch over to everyone. What did you think? Whether if you're a fan of that source material or if you're anime original, what do you think and where's it going to go from here in your opinion? Do let me know. Leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new around here. You can also consider supporting the Patreon if you want to see some exclusive content from live reactions to get video shoutouts and all that other fun jazz, so consider that if you want. But until next time everyone, please take care and have a good one.